So I still recall that meeting out in front of that shopping plaza. The ancient tribes of Israel, all black, and was Jesus black? Here he was, and so on and so forth. All Egyptians are black. No historical reference whatsoever. So, where do we leave off? Well, we have a picture of an Egyptian man. It won't be in the study here, but you can go to the reference on my website and see all the pictures. Right here at this, here's the study. You'll see the pictures, which are authentic pictures, archaeological discoveries over the years. This man here has dark skin. When you look at them, you see someone with Caucasian, some Negroid, some Mongoloid facial features, some black Egyptian advocates have objected to the use of ancient pictures, as they claim that people had their skin lightened for pictures anciently to reflect a higher social status, which one told me that. However, if that were true, it would tend to confirm that the bulk of the pharaohs and leaders of Egypt would not have been black. Because why would you change that to increase your status? If the blacks were the rulers, then they would be the other way, as presumably the pharaoh would have the highest social status. But even when intentional picture lightening may have occurred, that would not change the overall appearance of being Negroid to Caucasoid. There are certain specific features on the face and the body. Furthermore, when Negroid black men or black women are shown, they are shown as essentially the color black on hieroglyphs I have seen. Notice the following 1820 sketch of something on the wall of the tomb of the ancient Pharaoh Seti, 13th century BC. And that's in the Book of Gates fresco. The man to the far left was considered to be Libyan, and the far right was considered to be an Egyptian. Most ancient Egyptians were not black. Some were white and some were brownish, but with Caucasian facial features. Despite all this proof, someone challenged me on this and challenged me to debunk an article that asserted that the Israelites were black because supposedly the Egyptians were black. And the proof was that the article quoted opinions of some 19th century researchers who mistakenly claimed the ancient Egyptians were black. So to further debunk that nonsense, I looked for more evidence. Notice the following photographs. Here's a photograph. Mummy of 19th century King Ramses II. The Egyptian leader obviously was not black. When I showed the above picture to one who pushes the black Israelite lie, he claimed that the photograph was faked. But let me add that there are also numerous statues of Ramses II, and none of those show a black man either. Yet various proponents of black Egyptianism still want to insist that he was Negroid, which he was not. Notice the following statue of Prince Re-Hotep, son of Pharaoh Seti and his wife Nofret. Okay, there's the photograph. Pharaoh Seti would have been expected to have arranged his son's marriage. The prince was certainly not black. He has straight hair, and his wife was fairly white, and she is depicted in the statue with a black wig, according to scholars. And though the prince was fairly tan, he also had what would be considered Caucasian features. Furthermore, it would seem that Joseph, progenitor of Ephraim and Manasseh, father, likely married someone fairly white, as the Bible shows that Pharaoh gave him a wife. Now notice the following ancient depiction of an apparent member of the Egyptian nobility hunting. Ostrakhan of Egyptian hunting. The Egyptian hunter was white. Some have claimed that Queen Cleopatra VII was black. Yet notice an ancient painting, Cleopatra in Wikipedia. Here is a sculpture from the 1st century BC known as the Berlin Cleopatra, since it is now in Germany. Cleopatra was clearly white. Here are portraits that appear on the outside of mummy coffins. Mummies tended to be wealthy people and or relatives of the pharaohs, 1st century BC to 3rd century AD. Fayum mummy portraits, Wikipedia. The above people were clearly white. Well, what about the black pharaohs? Well, they actually tended to be Nubians from the area now known as Sudan. History shows that the Nubians invaded Egypt and ruled from 744 to 656 BCE and had pharaohs there. But that was centuries after the exodus of the Israelites. So those black pharaohs did not represent earlier Egyptian leaders, nor did they remain in power in Egypt. Now, this does not mean that no Egyptian pharaoh could have been black. There were different dynasties, and one could have had a black wife. But that the bulk of Egyptian pharaohs were Caucasian. Do not be misled by a few photos pushing the black Egyptian position. The bulk of ancient Egyptians simply were not Negroid. Furthermore, notice some DNA information. Egyptologists, writers, scholars, and others have argued the race of the ancient Egyptians since at least the 1970s. Some today believe they were sub-Saharan Africans. The problem, it was thought, is that mummy DNA cannot be sequenced, but a group of international researchers using unique methods have overcome the barriers to do just that. They found that the ancient Egyptians were most closely related to the peoples of the Near East, particularly from the Levant. This is the Eastern Mediterranean, which today includes countries of Turkey, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. The mummies used were from the New Kingdom and a period later than the Middle Kingdom, when Egypt was under Roman rule. Modern Egyptians share 8% of their genome with Central Africans, far more than ancient ones, according to the study published in the journal Nature Communications. The influx of sub-Saharan genes only occurred within the last 1,500 years. Now, this could be attributed to the trans-Sahara slave trade, or just from regular long-distance trade between two regions. Improved mobility on the Nile during this period increased trade, with the interior researchers claim. Perry P. Were the ancient Egyptians black or white? Scientists now know. June 11th, 2017. Just go to his website. Now, in 2017, a genetic study was conducted on 83 mummies from Abusir in the north of Egypt, near modern-day Cairo, which constituted the first reliable data set obtained from ancient Egyptians using high-throughput DNA sequencing methods. The study showed that ancient Egyptians had the greatest affinity for modern Middle Eastern, Arab, Levantine, and Anatolian populations, and had significantly more affinity with Southeastern Europeans than with Sub-Saharan Africans. Absolute estimates of African ancestry using these two methods in the three ancient individuals range from 6 to 15%. This level of Sub-Saharan African ancestry is significantly lower than that of modern Egyptians from Abusir, who range from 14 to 21%. Black Egyptian hypothesis in the Wikipedia. Our analyses reveal that ancient Egyptians shared more ancestry with Near Easterners than present-day Egyptians, who received additional sub-Saharan admixture in more recent times. This analysis establishes ancient Egyptian mummies as a genetic source to study ancient human history and offers the perspective of deciphering Egypt's past as a genome-wide level. Here's the research. Ancient Egyptian mummy genomes suggest an increase of sub-Saharan African ancestry in post-Roman periods. After I gave some of the above information to one who pushes the black Israelite view, he suggested that the DNA evidence was falsified. Another claim to debunk in the article I was referred to is that Caucasian people's skin cannot turn white from things like leprosy. Scriptures like Leviticus 13:4 were cited, which states, but if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, then the priest shall isolate the one who has the sore 7 days. Yet, this does not prove the black Israelite position. The reality is that, other than albinos, no one's skin is actually white, and even with them, bright white spots are possible. Obviously, Israelites who would have tended toward being tanned or olive-toned could show signs of bright white spots consistent with Leviticus 13:4. Thus, yes, white people can have parts of their skin turn white, and I have seen this happen clinically, though not from leprosy, but from forms of vitiligo to white people. Okay, so a little more research there. Another argument is that Egypt means black land, and that proves people were black. No, it does not. Consider the following. The name Egypt is believed to have come from the original name of Egypt's ancient capital, Memphis, Hut-ka-ptah, meaning castle of the Ka of Ptah. This name was often used, even for the country as a whole. Then the name came to be shortened and slightly transformed, considering the original consonants pronounced HTKPT. The three latter survived into respectively Kept, Kippitic, and Djibouti. This was rendered into the Greek Aegyptus and later English Egypt. The name of Egypt during ancient times, especially the Old Kingdom, was, however, Kemet, meaning black land. This referred to the fertile soil of the Nile Valley. Sometimes an opposite denotation was applied. Deshret, meaning red land. This referred to the desert, which also back then was the dominant landscape of the Egyptian territory. Today, the national name for Egypt is Misr, which comes from Arabic and means simply land or fortress, referring to the earliest Arabic settlements on Egyptian soil located south of what would become Cairo. So Egypt, meaning of the name, look Lex Encyclopedia. Therefore, the name does not prove that the residents were black, as it would make little sense for them to name the country after the color of the people, as many lands to the south also had black people. But naming it related to the land itself is more consistent with what seems to have happened. Perhaps it should be mentioned that I went through an article titled 10 Arguments That Prove Ancient Egyptians Were Black. Those arguments were not proof. They were assertions that other evidence, not generally in the article, refutes. Anyway, despite claims, the bulk of the ancient Egyptians were not black, nor were the bulk of the Israelites. Now look at the following. There's a stele. The Merentepte stele, Merentepta, stele, is dated to the 1200s BC. This actually mentions the children of Israel and also shows that the Egyptians at that time were not mainly black. And you see another one. Berlin pedestal. The Berlin pedestal may be the oldest archaeological discovery that mentions Israel. This was from the 1400s BC and shows 3 Israelite captives. Children of Israel were captives of the Egyptians for the first half of that century. Anyway, the 3 enslaved males are not black, but have more of a Caucasian Middle Eastern appearance. That evidence is also consistent with the view of most modern scholars who consider that the Jews are from a Mediterranean branch of Caucasoids. The following, here, this picture, is from 9th century BCE, black obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Israelite King Jehu bowing before Shalmaneser III. Note that the hair and beard of the bowing Israelite king is consistent with being Caucasoid and not Negroid or Mongoloid. Consider also the following. Some scholars have decided to test the validity of the claim that there exists Jews or of African descent. Parfit came to the conclusion that the Lemba people of Zimbabwe may have some connection to ancient Jewish populations based on historical and anthropological records or research. Moreover, a geneticist named Pharaoh